Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. A popular chart analyst is making the argument that the rotation has begun. And this is frankly what we've been waiting for, the rotation of money into altcoins. And, it typically begins with Ethereum. Historically, that's true. Once Ethereum starts running, you know what follows is everything else under the sun running. It's called alt season, my friends. And we're getting closer. And so if this analyst is correct, it's already like the beginning phase of it, it's already underway. But even if we have to wait a little bit and his timing is a little bit off his expectations, it's still coming. Like, in my estimation, it just could not be more obvious that by a lot, this is the most probable thing because of historic precedent. And I follow a ton of reputable chart analysts with really great track records. None of them are perfect, but great track records. And to see that they all believe that we, roughly speaking, are in that moment in time where it happens, yes, I buy that narrative because it just makes freaking sense, which means XRP finally enters price discovery for the first time in over 7 years and will melt faces. It's going to be fantastic. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so I've been saying a lot lately, and it's worth repeating here because I do want to talk about this a little bit. I'm not optimistic for XRP getting up to those higher price levels that many analysts that I follow are talking about, where it gets closer to $30 or maybe a little bit above that. I'm more conservative just in my suspicions here, but I could be wrong. I admit that too. So I do acknowledge it's possible if a crazy amount of money flows in, and I've been saying that a lot. There are some reputable people that actually think a crazy amount of money is going to flow in. And I wanted to share with you an example of just that, because the more money flows into Bitcoin, the more money ultimately will rotate, keyword rotate, there's a rotation, folks, into XRP specifically. Because once people have taken their profit from Bitcoin, if they've done well, they're not done. They're not done. They're not ready to leave the casino. They're ready to gamble some more. And they do that by investing in other stuff that hasn't taken off quite as much yet. That's always what happens here. Every single cycle, and it's going to happen again. And so look at this headline. Bitcoin at $200,000 by year end is now firmly in play, analyst says after muted U.S. inflation data. Wednesday's softer than expected U.S. inflation has likely set the stage for accelerated gains in Bitcoin, potentially to $200,000 by the end of the year, according to Matt Mina, crypto research strategist. If Bitcoin breaks out of the $105,000 to $110,000 range with conviction, we could see a sharp move to $120,000 and, more importantly, reach our year-end price target of $138,500 by the end of summer, Mina told CoinDesk in an email. Today's CPI print may serve as a bullish catalyst for Bitcoin, and it may be the unlock that brings this target forward by several months. If momentum continues building, $200,000 Bitcoin by year end is now firmly in play, Mina added. Okay, so let me say this. Most of the analysts that I follow happen to think that Bitcoin's going to be peaking this cycle maybe around $150,000. Some think a little bit less, maybe $135,000. Some think a little bit more, maybe $170,000, $180,000. But if you're talking about breaking $200,000, I'm just wondering how XRP doesn't get above 20. How does it not when Bitcoin gets that insanely high? So, I don't look. The truth is, nobody knows what's going to happen, and that's why it's exciting and fun to have these conversations and get perspective. Like, I'm curious about what all of you think, and you should tell me in the comment section below. But this isn't wacky to propose, even if I'm not convinced it's the most probable. I'll acknowledge it could. And I'm just highlighting that there are all sorts of reputable people out there actually who do think there's a very reasonable shot that this could be the case. And so I'm always thinking when I see these price predictions for Bitcoin, and a lot of the Looney Tunes, like the Maximalists, they're so Looney Tunes, I don't even pay attention to them. That's not this guy, though. When I see these predictions, though, these expectations, these possibilities as proposed by people like Mr. Mina here, I'm thinking about what that means for my altcoins and specifically XRP. Because the vast majority of my crypto holdings are in alts. strong majority. But I know what this means if Bitcoin goes that berserk. I know it. Here's a post from chart analyst Crypto Wizard. This is a Bitcoin ETH pair right here. And he says, the rotation begins. Just like every bull market, this moment comes. The capital rotation from Bitcoin to Ethereum is beginning. Ethereum is set to outpace, and that means altcoins too. Patience pays. And so Ethereum recently, it's been performing pretty damn well. It was allegedly dead. That was stupid. I was screaming that for months. And the price of Ethereum from where it bottomed, it roughly doubled already. So, and it's a little bit lower than that now, but still, like it roughly doubled. And it ain't done. It is not done yet. Now, I would say this, though. The chart that I'm more interested in, even than just looking at this pair, though, this is interesting as well, is Bitcoin dominance, because that's even more telling. And from what I see, like, there's so many analysts that are saying Bitcoin, I was talking about in my last video, actually, Bitcoin dominance, it looks like it's about to break down. Perfect timing for that, because when that happens, altcoin dominance go up. Oh, yes, so we know what that means. As somebody says patience pays, yes. It literally pays in altcoin profits. Here's a post from chart analyst Crypto Michael. He says, and this is hilarious to me, but he's right. It's like many are entering short positions here. Shorting days before the historic 8-year breakout, your shorts will be turned to fuel for the breakout pump. Thank you for your service. So you can see where his optimism is. He's like, oh, really? You want to short this market now, right before everything breaks out, when there's no exuberance in the market and everything's perfectly primed in the same or similar ways that it's been in previous market cycles? This is the moment where you want to short it. Oh, okay. Good luck, folks. And consider this. And this kind of drives the point home further. This is from chart analyst Bobby A. He says, ask yourself this. Why all the fear and skepticism? Why all the choppy price action and deviations? Why all the anxiety and worry over tariff narratives and other geopolitical concerns? Do markets generally top during conditions such as the ones we are currently experiencing? Is this euphoria? Are most market participants making money under these conditions? What does it mean for Bitcoin to be at or near all-time highs amid a scared market? Are levels once considered euphoric during the last cycle now riddled with fear? Answers to the questions above could not paint a clearer picture, in my view. And so you know what he thinks, obviously. Do markets generally top during these conditions? No. Is this euphoria? No. Are most market participants making money under these conditions? No, they're not. Exactly, they're not. And the prices are this high? That's freaking exciting. We're this high. Bitcoin over 100K, XRP over $2. We're up this high. And there isn't exuberance yet? That's incredible. The opportunity at hand cannot be overstated. Life-changing wealth for so many people. That's what's coming. Including for tons of us in the XRP community. Here's a post from chart analyst Jackus. He says, Bitcoin dominance literally have not moved down this entire cycle yet. Please don't get it. Or rather, people, I read that wrong. People don't get it and are lost looking at the trees instead of seeing the forest. The next bear market lows might still be higher than the current prices for lots of these digital assets. Now, that's an interesting thought. And I'm willing to bet that is indeed true. So, like, let's say XRP does go to $20. And then let's say it has a massive crash, which historically is normal. Say it crashes 80%. I'm just making that up because it's a big percentage in the realm of what you should probably expect. Well, if it goes to 20, then you're still looking at $4 XRP. So think about it. If that's the bear market bottom, which is possible if it goes that high, then that's higher than where we are now. That's almost twice as high as where we are now. And that could, in theory, be the bottom. Think about it. And what if we see $30 XRP? What if those analysts are correct that predict that? Well, then if you're talking about an 80% crash, that's $6 XRP still. So there is a chance that even at these prices, we might never see these again once it goes. And it seems like a virtual 100% certainty that the prices we saw before the election, like XRP at 49 cents, that's where it was. I think it's safe to say at this point, unless the entire market right now falls apart because of some sort of unforeseen black swan, well, that's redundant. If there's some sort of black swan event, outside of that, if we have a full-blown alt season, I really don't think you're going to see 49-cent XRP ever again. It's probably gone for good at this point. Just like in 2017, XRP cratered from $3.35 down to even as low as 10 cents, but it never got back down to half a penny, did it? Because that's what it was before when the cycle started, half a penny. No, it was 20 times higher than that, even at its low. It's worth thinking about. These prices are not going to be here forever. People are going to look back at the opportunity that you have right now at this point in 2025 and be like, oh my God, I wish I caught up at XRP at $2. Oh my God. Mark my words, people a decade, however long, way in the future, they're going to be saying stuff like that. Here's a post from chart analyst Dan Gambardello. He shared a video, and part of this, he talked about XRP, and so I watched this. And Dan said something that I think is just some freaking common sense here, and it's in line with exactly what I've been insisting makes sense for the longest damn time now. And so in his video here, and so he wrote here, altcoin charts screaming, Ethereum, Cardano, and XRP want to ignite. That's what he wrote. Yeah, XRP does want to ignite. It sure as hell does. And Dan Gambardello compared this XRP cycle to 2017. You know, the fact that it consolidated after the first pump for 6 months. And, you know, and he says, that's happening again. This chart analyst is pointing that out. I'm not a chart analyst, but I know that. It's very obvious. It's striking the way that XRP is behaving quite similar to that cycle. And even last cycle, I would argue. But he was talking about 2017 specifically, which is why I'm focusing on that right now. But it's true. It just consolidated and then it went. And he's saying the chart looks the same. That is the argument he's making in his video. Yes, he is correct. It looks exactly the goddamn same. He says that's the point where it is time for XRP to ignite. Where we are right now, it's the time for XRP to ignite, roughly speaking. And he didn't promise a specific timeline. He just knows based on what's happening, a big picture, that this, roughly speaking, is the moment in time where you should expect it, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter, whatever it is. We're living in that moment where any day you can wake up and it's just going. He gets it. He is right about that. And he emphasized how healthy this is. That's another thing that I talk about all the time because it's so obvious. This consolidation for XRP above the $2 price point, ridiculously healthy, shows incredible strength. It's exactly what I've been saying throughout this period. He is spot on with this. Here's a post from chart analyst Greg Crypto. He says, XRP, TikTok, MFs, hashtag bears. No room to move, so it's almost time to explode. The big question, will it break to the downside or skyrocket upside? And you know he thinks it's going to pop to the upside. And I agree. I have the same opinion. Absolutely. It's just like when I was talking about, you know, in the months leading up to November when XRP finally popped. We didn't know for sure when it was going to pop. As we got closer to election, I had suspicion, which I made known on this channel, that, you know, it really may just be the case that we have to wait until after the election because then markets will have clarity. And because markets don't like uncertainty. So once you have that big question mark, who's gonna win the election, then you can start to plan based on what you expect from whoever would have won. In this case, it was Trump, obviously. And so that wasn't surprising, but we were reaching, you know, it was this moment where it was almost 7 years at that point of consolidation for XRP, and the volatility range was decreasing as we got closer to the apex of the trend lines that multiple chart analysts drew, indicating where we were. And so you know, the question was, because, you know, typically what's going to happen is you're going to see a break before you hit the apex of those trend lines before you get to the end of that. And so the question is it going to break to the upside or the downside? And I argued, folks, we're in a bull market. The answer is to the upside. And that sure as hell is what happened. That's just obvious to me, though. It seems very obvious. Well, I'll argue the same thing here. We're still in a bull market. So when this bad son of a bitch breaks, it's going to the upside, price discovery, and melting faces. It just seems obvious that that is the most probable thing. And yes, I know, nobody can know for sure, but by a lot, this is the most probable thing to occur. Outside of a black swan event, yes, this is the answer. But it is possible we're going to see some pullbacks in the short term, and I keep sharing with you, not to be a Debbie Downer, you know, I'm Mr. XRP Bull. Like, I could not be more optimistic and excited about this. But I am highlighting that there are multiple analysts, even now, warning that it's possible you could first see XRP move to the downside. Why? Well, liquidity, my friends. Here's a post from chart analyst Steph Crypto, just from this morning. He says, will XRP sweep $2 before liftoff? Liquidation cluster still intact. And you can see right here what he's talking about, where my mouse is moving. Right there. And so there's lots of liquidity there. So it's not a guarantee you don't absolutely have to, but all sorts of analysts have been highlighting this, including Crypto Insight UK. He's been talking about that a lot too. He's not promising you it's going to happen, but he is well aware that this is the type of thing that frequently does happen in similar circumstances. But all of these analysts that are warning about that are still saying that would typically be the bottoming for the particular structure that we're in, chart-wise, and then you resume to the upside. So even then, it's not worth freaking out. Here's an article from Rakesh Upadhyay, who writes for Cointelegraph. He's also recognizing could go lower. And so I am seeing, again, just to be clear, like I am seeing this from multiple analysts. It's not 100% clear what is most probable in the very short term anyway, which is what we're talking about here. He says the flattish moving averages and the RSI just above the midpoint suggest the XRP USDT pair could remain range bound between $2 and $2.65 for a few more days. But folks, you see, he's expecting something to happen sooner than later. A few more days, yeah. And I'm seeing lots of analysts be like, guys, like something's going to happen either imminently or, if it's not literally imminently, pretty damn soon. And then he says if the price closes below the moving averages, the pair could slide to $2. On the other hand, a break above $2.36 clears the path for a rally to $2.65. A break and close above $2.65 signals the start of a new move up towards $3. And tons of analysts are highlighting $2.65. Tons of them. The blockchain backer, Eat Greg Crypto, and there are more. I don't want to do a comprehensive list here. Tons of analysts specifically cite that, or something close to it. And then he says here, on the other hand, a break below $2 opened the gates for a fall to $1.61. And that's about the most bearish possibility I've seen any analyst cite. And even then, it would probably still be pretty short-lived if that happened. But I'm not seeing any analysts even talk about $1.61 again. He's the only one. And so usually when I look at like what most analysts say, if there's an outlier like that, like if there's one analyst that's saying this out of my group of analysts I follow, almost never happens. Almost never. Now sometimes the calls that are people that almost nobody believes that. Sometimes they happen. Sometimes the improbable happens. Usually not. So I'm not going to bank on that. Here's a post from chart analyst Cassie Trades. This is an XRP USD chart. She's also warning about a possible move to the downside before resuming to the upside. And she also believes there's going to be a big move sooner than later. Take a look at this. We're just days away from the apex of XRP's macro consolidation, and price is hovering above support while funding quietly climbs. That's a dangerous combo. As of this morning, funding rates are ticking up to 0.01% the 8-hour without any meaningful breakout attempt. If we start to reach 0.02% or higher with no move, it signals a high probability of a liquidity sweep to the downside. Why? Because algo are watching open interest build while price stalls, and it doesn't take much to flush unprotected long positions. That puts $2.01, $1.90, and even $1.55 in play if $2.25 fails. So I guess actually technically that would be the lowest, but she's not saying that absolutely has to happen at $1.55. But then she says that kind of drop would likely generate the exact momentum needed for a powerful wave 3 breakout. Volatility is nearly inevitable. Whether it's one last dip or a significant breakout, the next move is likely to define the rest of the summer. Well, we'll see what happens, but there are so many analysts that think that we actually are going to see some fireworks this summer. And I've articulated that reason in so many videos, I don't want to repeat it here. But either way, the best is yet ahead. God forbid we have to wait until after the summer. Okay, fine. Well, I've already been waiting over 7.5 years. I'll be fine waiting slightly longer, okay? I will wait however long it takes because I firmly believe it's coming, whatever the timeline. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.